This is the Outlier's Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hello there, and welcome to the Outlier's Edge podcast. I'm your host and founder, Niiamah Ashong, and today we have the opportunity to really go on a journey with our guest, Christie Tate. Christie, first, it's just great to have you here. I'm glad to see you.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
We're gonna have an amazing conversation. Christie is an author and writer. She wrote this amazing book called Group: How One Therapist and a Circle of Strangers Saved Me. And Christie, today I'm really excited to have our conversation and explore just about the journey that you had, not just in group, but in the process, even like being the writer and sharing this story out in the world. Here in Outlier's Edge, we're a collection of entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, writers, people who have a mission or something that has to get out into the world here. And we've been different from most other people along our path. We're now in a space of finding how do we own that difference, own what it is that makes us different, and use it to make a difference. And I know that you are someone who is really adamant, and not just adamant, but in action around making a difference about who you are and what you've been through. So would love to spend this conversation really just diving into what I call the inner journey behind the external journey. Most of us will see, let's start with the external journey. Let's give people a chance to see like who you are from if they're looking for you online, if they're reading your book. Let's get a chance to see that part of you, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper onto actually I would say a little bit deeper, but we'll dive in a lot deeper on basically who it took for you to be this person here out in the world right now. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great. I'm really excited. I'd like to go deeper, so let's do it.
All right, awesome. All right, well, Christie, why don't you first let us know, like, how do people like see you kind of externally? And this might there's the element of this here is like from the outside perspective, how do people think about Christie Tate?
Oh my gosh, that is we're just going in. What I hear reflected to me from the people who know me and love me is I seem like a person who's very, very driven, very ambitious. I was a lawyer in a very hard charging law firm. I left that and because I wanted to have time to balance parenting, writing, and being a lawyer. And I had this book come out in October of 2020, and it did really well. It's a debut memoir. I am a nobody. I am not a famous person, a singer. I'm not a daughter of a famous person. So it looks like I just exploded onto the scene and hit the New York Times bestseller list, which is an awesome privilege. But it does, just like you mentioned in the introduction, that doesn't tell people about the years of rejection, the days of self-doubt. Like that's not, the outside impression does not match my inner understanding of myself. And that's actually what drove me to group in the first place. It's that disconnect can be a very, very painful place.
Let's talk a bit here. Thanks, Christie, because I think that this is really it. Like we're going to hear all the amazing things that you do, but it's like, or that you've done, but you're a real person, and I think that's one of the main things that we love to think about here at Outliers. That it's like we are people who are doing like extraordinary things, but we're people at the core. And for you, if I'm hearing this right, you found this through the path of group.
Yes.
Yeah, tell me a little bit here about like, I'd love to understand more about your journey, just so we can really get a chance to see this here. I would love to understand what was life like for you. Well, actually, let's make sure we're all on the same page first and foremost. When we say group here, what are we referring to in particular?
Sure. So what I mean by group, and the title of my book is, I'm talking about a psychotherapy situation. There's a therapist, there are group members. I am one of the group members in the group. It's a psychotherapy paradigm where instead of individually, where you sit with a doctor and you have your 45 minutes and it's just the two of you and it's really you talking to the doctor and getting feedback, this is a more dynamic situation. There are 5 or 6 or 7 other people in the circle, plus the doctor. And that has been, I started my mental health journey in 2001, and I didn't have the money for individual therapy. I had no interest in group. I had an interest in getting well. I knew I was having thoughts about suicide. I was really, really depressed. I didn't know how to fix it. I'm a smart person and I could do well on tests, but I couldn't fix my inner malaise and loneliness, and I needed help. And I was a student and I didn't have money for big old fancy therapy. And I started going to group because it's cheaper. It's 1/3 the cost of individual. And I thought, well, as soon as I graduate and become a lawyer and I have real money and good insurance, then I will go get a real therapist and do a one-on-one thing like they do on TV. But it turned out that the group setting for therapy was actually really, really good for me. And it was able that was a process by which I could get where I wanted to go, which was becoming an integrated person who could attach to other people.
As I hear this here, Christie, like it takes me, I'm thinking about this now. We're having this conversation in 2021. So this is like 20 years ago. You started this process here. You started to use this tool. And when I think about like the conversations that are happening right now around mental health and such, like it's at this time, it feels like a lot more of like an open space to engage. Like there's almost like there's some kind of appetite for it, and people know that there's something to explore here. But you started this back in 2001, and I
Yeah,
would really love to just like understand a little bit about like, in my mind, there was a stigma around it.
totally.
It's like, yeah. So tell me a little bit about what it was like when you first got in there, because if I'm hearing you right, you made a decision to do something that most other people probably weren't talking about, they weren't sharing about, they definitely weren't writing books about at that time. So
Right.
like, can you tell me a little bit about like just entering in there in the beginning of it to the extent that you can remember it?
Yeah, I actually do remember. I remember thinking I was so devastated that I needed help. And that's a place I think a lot of people are in. There's a lot of messages in families, in religion, in culture at large that we should be able to make it right, work hard, buy this book and you'll feel better, eat this, exercise this way. And I had tried everything and I was just as lonely and depressed and disconnected and isolated from people as I'd ever been. And I would look around me and I was a student, as I said. So I had law school friends. They were in my study group. I didn't let them get too close to me because I didn't know how, right? I don't know how to attach. So I'd kind of like, I left parties early. I felt like a freak because I didn't drink and I was worried about my eating all the time. I had an eating disorder and I just couldn't relax and be with people. And none of them were going to therapy, as far as I knew. Nobody talked about, I never heard anybody say it. And when I first went to see the doctor that I write about in the book, who I still see, I went to see him and I was like, well, what do I tell people? What am I going to tell people? Like, this is going to be, the session was like 7:30 in the morning till 9, 7 to 9 in the morning. So then I could go on to my law school classes. But I'm like, well, what if someone asked me where I came from? And he looked at me like, well, you tell them you were at a doctor's appointment. And I thought, okay, but like every week, I mean, they're going to figure out I'm in therapy. I was so afraid. And I remember the first time, this was 2 years into treatment. So I've been going every week for 2 years. And I was standing in the student lounge at my law school and somebody said something. And off the top, I just like let my guard down for a minute. I said, oh, well, my therapist told me I should try that. It was like something, make myself go out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I just head to toe felt hot from embarrassment. Like, I told this woman named Renee that I had a therapist. And I remember going to group and saying, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. And there was a man in group who was like, oh, honey, therapy is a status symbol. Like, this just makes you rich and fabulous. And I remember thinking, I could think of it that way, but I wasn't there yet. There was no Simone Biles who had dropped out of the Olympics yet to take care of her mental health. There was no, the other day I walked into a coffee shop and there was a big poster of Michael Phelps, this decorated Olympian. He was like, therapy helped me. Maybe it will help you. I was like, I felt so happy for all the 20 and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds who need to see that today. There was no poster when I was entering this. And so it really contributed to a sense of there's something really wrong with me. I go to therapy. And now, of course, I shout it from the rooftops, but I didn't 20 years ago.
Chrissy, thanks for saying this here. Thanks for taking us to that moment here and letting us like actually experience it. I know that in your book, you're really good about taking us to moments, taking us to sessions, things that take place in your journey in a really real way. And I just want to just like acknowledge your gift at really taking us to the moment there with you here.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. There's when you talk about this here, I feel that sense of like not being able to ask for help, or knowing that like, or not being able to tell people that you're asking for help. There's a couple of different things that are all in that moment there. And yet now you've gone and you've written a book about this. Can you tell me a little bit here? I'm curious about like, what was your journey through this here? I mean, the book came out in October of 2020. So there's years that are in between here. So like, I think it's really something I look at when we have conversations, and not just like say 1 minute I didn't want to go in, and the next minute I'm like, I'm a New York Times bestseller,
Right.
So I think the question I would I'd like to know is like, what made this like so important for you to get this out into the world? Like you were getting your results, you were
Yeah.
my instance, like you were having transformations, you were seeing yourself as a different person, and then something said, I got to get this out into the world here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I I felt so much gratitude. And gratitude is even a flat word
Yeah.
compared to how I felt. I really do believe that the group process and this therapist and the people who sat with me in the circles, they really, really saved my life. They gave me the tools to be in my life and to have my life. And that was always true. And I was able to have friends and roommates, and then I was able to have a husband, and then 2 children, and then I was able to have enriching relationships with my family of origin, which I hadn't been able to do before. And my cup overflowed, right? And I had all these riches, and it didn't come to me to like, I'm going to write and tell people how to do this. What happened was I felt the inner prompting to write, and I began to write all the time. And I had written I started in fiction. So I'm like trying to fictionalize what happened to me. Like there's a young, sad woman and she got a great therapist. And there was no spark in the fiction because I wasn't in there. I was trying to like tell my story and not tell my story. And finally, someone said to me, just tell your story. Just tell it like what happened to you. And then once I felt I had permission and I unlocked that within myself with the help of other people, I realized that people don't know a lot about group, and they don't know that it's possible to transform a life. I couldn't do it by myself. And obviously, it took a lot of years and people and willingness to do things to change what was happening in my life. And I realized this could really be a balm for somebody who is just where I was, like awesome on paper, a baller at work, has nailed down a great internship or a job, is on the partner track, but inside is lonely, dying, isolated, kind of low key wants to die. I was writing this book for her because that's who I was back then. And this book didn't exist. And even if someone's like, oh my God, I am never doing group therapy, or they don't live in a town where they can go see my Dr. Rosen, and that's not their cup of tea, what I believe I shared with my book is a sense of there is hope there. Lives do change. Mine was one of them. And so maybe you don't do it the way I did, but you can do it your way. And you can start today by looking at your secrets or looking at the ways that you protect your image and keep yourself from getting help. So mostly it's sort of a love letter, A, to my group mates, but B, it's also to that lonely 27-year-old Christie who didn't know transformation was possible. She didn't believe it. She had never seen it, and she didn't think it would ever happen to her.
When you say this here, Christy, thank you so much. Like I'm deeply moved by what you say, and I think the elements of this here from tapping into why it's like, oh, I recognize that for me in certain ways. The elements of loneliness is something that I know. Loneliness has come with even surrounded. I'm a massive extrovert. I love people, like surrounded by people, and I still know deep loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's something here around what you're talking about in terms of knowing that there are tools available, being in an environment, like finding the tool that worked for you, and really just allowing yourself to get support to make a transformation here that that really speaks to me. And I'm as you're saying this here, there's a part of me that's loneliness right now. I just think, like, especially at the time of this conversation, I just feel it's absolutely rampant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely rampant. It's something that, let's say this, it might just now just be more available to be seen.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm just really grateful that you went through and that you decided to slow down and actually just share your story. There's an element here that, as we're talking, there's different places that feel really interesting to explore. I want to make sure that we hit on the things that really bring you to life. So let's make sure we do that as the conversation continues. I'm thinking right now about, like, from Outlier's perspective here, and there's the part of here where it feels like you went past some kind of limit. And when I look at, we call it the Outlier's edge. We look at, like, the edge of our, like, what gives us an edge, what's our advantage, and then the other side of it, what's the edge, what's the limit that we are afraid to get through, or we're finding difficulties to get through. So I want to kind of explore this here from the standpoint of the limit here. When you said you got, like, this prompt to just start writing, and when you started writing, it was around fiction, it was fictionalized, and then it transformed to just share your story.
Yeah.
I find that incredible, to not just share your story. I've seen the power of sharing your story. I find it incredible that you're actually able to do it.
Yeah.
And so, like, can you tell me a little bit here, like, as it's a big difference between, like, having a hypothetical fictional person who's going through something and making it your story. So you could have been a champion for group, you could have been a champion for mental health treatment, you could have been out there removing the stigma, or like helping, like, through any other means, but it came through your personal story. So I would love to just, like, explore that a little bit here and just understand, like a little bit more of the path that made that more and more available to you. And yeah, let's explore that a little bit. Christy, take us to that.
Yeah. So when when I switched from fiction to nonfiction, I was like, oh, well, I know my story, and I could picture the arc of the book that became Group. And I know the day that I started Group. I know why I went. I know that what happened. I know what happened, which is I found out I was first in my law school class, and I should have been, like, so pumped, like, the world is my oyster. That's incredible accomplishment. And it didn't fix me. It didn't even make me feel better for more than, like, 5 minutes. And I knew I was going to be in a career where the work was just going to grind me down. And if I wanted to do some deep personal work, I needed to do it before I got shunted into this, like, high-powered career. So I know where it started. And in my mind, I could picture the end of the book. I'm at a wedding. It's incredible that someone as isolated as me could get married. And who's at, more importantly than a wedding, I mean, a wedding is, like, fine, but who's there? All these people who have lifted me up all these years through Group, they're all there, and I can feel their love. And so I knew the beginning and I knew the end, and I basically knew the middle parts too, because I lived them. But when I had an early draft and I thought, well, I'm ready, I've done it. I was a solid writer. I was very solid, and I had a good voice. But as I sent it around, trying to get a book deal, trying to get an agent, all the things you have to do on the business side, I got the same feedback over and over again, which is it's superficial, it's not well developed, and there's too many jokes. And I sat with that, which is essentially rejection. It was rejection, but it was really helpful feedback because what it showed me was if I was really going to do this, become a nobody, a non famous person who publishes a memoir, if I wanted to do that, I was going to have to be much braver and much more honest. And I couldn't make a joke about everything. I was going to have to take readers to the scenes of the places where I participated in my own debasement, sexually, professionally, socially. I was going to have to show what it was like so I could show how I changed. And to tell you the truth, I got the willingness and the bravery and the really just the courage to put the truth, deeper truth on the page because I was surrounded by writers. I met another group of writers. They all do that. They they write really, really honestly about their bodies, their relationships, their lives. So I wasn't by myself. I had other people who were swimming in the same water. And the other thing I did that was really important to being brave, which is what it takes to write a memoir, is I consumed a lot of art by women who were doing the same thing, like across genres. So I'm watching stand-up comedy, Ali Wong and Wanda Sykes and Hannah Gadsby, and they're on stage in front of live people talking about their bodies and what they do and what they don't do. And I took just tremendous courage. Like I borrowed some of their light in order to write my book. And I kept thinking about there's somebody out there that needs to hear this really explicit story about a parasite I had when I was a kid. And the more specific I got, the more connected I was to my own light. And the more I was willing to give it to the world, which sounds very airy fairy, but that's how it felt.
Yeah, that it's interesting because like as you say, it sounds airy fairy. It's like I really understand that.
Good.
There's something that comes out. I feel like the more personal something is, the more universal it is.
Yeah.
Like we go through this. We have our own moments. We have our own stories here. And I think this is why I'm like as we're talking, like the feeling of gratitude keeps rising up within me. I know that like you do not hold back in your book at all.
No.
You do not hold back in your book, and there's some stories. What are some of the stories for someone that's listening right now that's like wants to run off and just like read the thing? What's one of the most difficult stories that you had to write when you really came in and said I need to go and be honest about this
Right.
shit?
In early drafts, there's a lot of like, I was learning how to date as a 27, 28, 20, because I just hadn't done all that. I was busy trying to achieve and having an eating disorder and dating alcoholics. So I didn't really have to ever be mature in an intimate relationship. So I was doing that as an adult, things that other people did when they were 14, right? So what's interesting to me is when I look back, telling the sexual stories that was a little cringy, like, oh my God, my mom is super religious. She's not going to want this. And I was like, I'll just deal with her later. The parts that were harder to tell, where I had the most work to do on take out the joke and say how you really felt, were around eating and some stuff around some trauma. I had experienced a trauma when I was a child. So I had gone to Hawaii with a friend, and while we were there, her father drowned. And that was a huge part of my therapy, and it should have it belonged in the book, absolutely. But there it was very hard to sustain the scene. I kept thinking like, and on the one hand, I would think, oh my God, I'm going to bum readers out if they hear how awful and tragic this day was. And then I realized I was using the reader as an excuse. The truth is, it's really painful to revisit trauma in great detail. And I had all the details, they lived in my body and in my memory. And it just took some tries and some support to get it on the page. And the other place where I just remember my writing teacher circled in the original draft, I had one line about how I ate too many apples. I literally think it was I ate too many apples. The truth is, had an eating disorder. I was in a 12-step recovery program, but I had a really, really, really big secret, which is that at night I would binge on like 6, 7, up to like 12 red apples. Now that's weird. Like I remember someone in my writing group said to me when I was able to say it out loud. Somebody said to me, "What do you mean you eat a lot of apples?" I was like, "Well, I would binge on these apples at night, like 7, 10." And someone in my writing group said, "That's so weird." And I just started laughing. I was like, "Yeah, it's weird. It's not like ice cream or pizza. It's nothing. You would never make a movie about a woman eating apples." But I had so much shame about it. I had more shame about this secret around my produce intake than I had around the stupid sex I had with men who didn't like me. So that to me is interesting. And I think maybe that might resonate with anyone who's got shame around eating or trauma. Like there's something deeply, for me, the traumas that I had experienced were wrapped in shame. And I think that goes back to our earlier point, which is I was supposed to be okay. Even though this horrible thing happened to me when I was 12 and a half years old, or I was 13 and a half. This terrible thing happened on the beach. I should have been okay after all these years. So I had this shame that I still had unprocessed grief and trauma around it. And for me, I've sort of discovered like it's really simple. All roads lead back to shame. And because I'm ashamed of certain things and I don't talk about them and I don't share them and I don't shine a light on them, and then they become really big and furry in my head and they drive me away from other people, and group has helped me let go of that toxic process.
You say shame, you talk about secrets. I'm like, as I just want to just like actually just invite anyone here that's listening, just pause, take some time right now to just like reflect and let that sink in. Give yourself like the gift of just like seeing where else might shame secrets might like what might need to be shown a light on right now. What's the one sentence thing that just kind of flows out from you and then goes out into the world? Because Christie, in this moment here, I'm just really there's a lot that's in that in just in that share right there. There's a lot in the element of exploring and understanding and being in a place where you can look at and be with shame and like you said, like to be in the trauma and go through the details to hold that scene here. I'm really the feeling of great gratitude because really it just really shines through. You talked earlier about secrets, and I feel like there's something in that word that feels really important to like just explore a bit here because
Yeah,
you know this is your debut memoir. They ask you to be more honest, so you can be more honest, but it's like but now we're getting into I don't know. I tend to hear people talk about vulnerability, right? And vulnerability again is something that, like in the recent years, has been something that people have embraced more.
yeah,
But there's something that goes even further. I feel like when you use the word secrets, it feels like it hits into its own realm
yeah.
of vulnerability. So I'll be really curious as from your experience and this might have been what group brought to you. It might have been through the writing process. It might have been something else. But like, I'm really curious about like your experience with secrets, vulnerability, and it comes up for us as outliers and as we're out there trying to share our story or really bring out what's important to us. So, I'd be curious about your experience with it and how you've been able to
Sure.
look at the difference.
I think in one of my very first appointments with Dr. Rosen, and I had 3 individual appointments before he put me in a group. He said something to me. Oh, I know what I said. It was right before I'd had my last individual session, and we were about my next time I was going to see him, I was going to be in this group with these strangers. And I said, I was hesitating because I was scared. I was like, who are these people going to be? I'm going to do therapy in front of other people, and then I'm going to have to listen to their problems. It's not so appetizing. And I said to Dr. Rose, and I said, well, what's going to happen when I start group? And he said the most terrifying thing ever. He said, all of your secrets are going to come out. And I was like, oh my God. I did not think I was a person with secrets. I wouldn't have used that word. It was all subconscious. But the minute he said that to me, instantly I thought like a list populated in my head of all the things I was never going to tell the group. I was not going to tell them how I ate. I was not going to tell them the ways I made decisions around dating and who to love and who to give myself to. I wasn't going to tell him any of that. I wasn't going to tell him some of the things that had happened in my childhood. And some of those, I would not have used the word secret. But the truth is, they were secrets. I grew up in a household where we weren't supposed to talk about our business with other people. And so things would happen that would be upsetting or confusing, like deeply confusing. Maybe nobody was doing anything wrong, but I was like, why is mom yelling? Or why is there now a hole in the wall? And something had happened, and I knew it in my little girl body. I knew something was amiss. There was some kind of violence or rage had been expressed, but I wasn't supposed to pay attention. I wasn't supposed to notice, and I was not supposed to ask. That became a secret. And I think had Dr. Rosen asked me, what's a secret at that time before I'd started group, I would have said, well, secrets are like if you're having an affair or if you stole money. It was like, I think I thought secrets were like crimes, as opposed to, I'm not supposed to tell you what my mom told me about my dad when I was 12 and now I'm 30 and I'm still holding it. Or there was just all these ways that secrets interacted in my family, which just meant don't tell mom about grandma, don't tell grandma about your brother, don't tell anyone where dad goes every night. And that just piled up in my body. And what Dr. Rosen explained to me is when you hold secrets for someone else, or somebody says, which could look like, right? Don't tell anybody. Even if they don't say it, they're like, well, this is just between us, right? Anytime that process happens for me, and maybe this is for everyone, I think he thinks it's universal, but like you're agreeing to hold the shame. A secret carries shame. And when I realized I had all this secrets and shame, and they were working in tandem to keep me repressed and isolated, I became a little less willing to hold those secrets. And Dr. Rosen would continually say, well, who said that? Well, I would say something like, I once had a therapist, and what was your therapist's name? And I'd be like, well, who cares? Why do you care? This was like 10 years ago. And when I would resist, we would discover, well, I had some shame because what that therapist told me was kind of crazy. And I didn't want to embarrass this therapist who I had never seen again, who I hadn't seen in 10 years, but I didn't want to out her to Dr. Rosen and these five strangers. And I was able to see and uncover all the ways I hold secrets for people, whether they're asking me to or not. I just was acclimated to holding people's shame and secrets. And group taught me how to really look at that and the cost of that. And if I wanted to do it, okay, but I should understand the cost.
You talk about the cost of it here, and I think that as you're sharing this here, it's really wonderful, Christy, to just be able to take some time to just see this, see that I actually feel the weight of each individual secret, and like the insidious way that it may come in, right? It's just like, we'll just keep this between us,
Yeah.
totally like off the cuff. This is what friends do, so on and
Right.
so forth. And at the same time, it's like it comes with, it's a secret and a shame, and it accumulates over here. And one of the things that really struck me about what you were just saying was how innocuous it could be on both ends, both when you take it in and as well as like when you're sharing the story. Like, well, I have my therapist, and he's like, what's the name? And in that moment, you felt the resistance.
Yep.
In that moment, you felt the resistance. And what I'm getting about you, let me know if this is incorrect here, but over time, you've been able to lean more into the resistance. When I say lean more into the resistance, it's like explore the resistance and actually like confront that and choose a different path. Does that feel right when I say that there?
Yes, absolutely. I would love, I feel like my ideal would be that I would be allergic to that resistance, that I would be allergic to the even the process whereby I agree. Most of the people in my life know, don't tell me anything you don't want me. It's not even necessarily that I'm going to tell, but the minute you tell me it's a secret, the process begins for me. That's just how it works inside of me. And so most people in my life know not to tell me things. And I prefer that because it saves me the trouble of being like, you know what, I don't really do secrets. But yes, I do still see the resistance, and the best case scenarios, I'm curious about it, like, because it's not always clear to me where the shame is. I don't always know, and sometimes it's so innocuous. A friend of mine recently told me that she was pregnant. Now, this is a wonderful quote unquote secret. And it's her business to tell people that she is pregnant. It is 100% not my business. But she made this big production about me not telling anyone. And I was like, I'm probably going to tell my husband, like I don't do well on my own with, and it turns out when I examined it, she has a ton of shame about her age, about the pregnancy. And I don't need to tell our mutual friends. I don't need to write a blog post about her pregnancy, but I do honor my own history and my own boundaries by telling my husband. And if I can't get the relief I need, I will take it to my therapy group. And that's how I work in the world.
Christie, there's an element of this here that feels like, as you're talking, like this, there's so much of this that just feels really familiar, and it's really I feel it's important because I feel like we should take some time to just talk about like being in like the group process. I haven't gone through group therapy myself, but I do a lot of like group coaching, like, and I've been in environments, and like I seek environments, and this is something I feel like I'm getting a little bit from you, where it's like I seek environments where I'm able to see, I call it my edge, where the resistance, where the limits, like, and to be able to be in that space where it's like, oh, I didn't know, almost like what you're saying with the allergy towards it. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was here. I would love to examine this. I would love to get curious. I don't like, it might have to stay. I may not have to do anything with it, but I want to at least know that it's there, and to choose something different. And as you're talking, and I'm feeling this internal affiliation toward what you're saying, it's making me realize that, like, oh, this might be something that is not just a Niiamah thing, but it might be something that comes in the territory of being an outlier, in the territory of feeling lonely, of for me, my thing is I choose to be a chameleon. I'm always someone that like, I realized very early on in life that I don't fit in. I was first generation from Africa, from Ghana specifically, but my parents sat me down at age 7. They said, like, just so you know, you're not like the Black people on TV, and you're not like the white friends that you have over here. You're African. But I wasn't African because I was like also in this other thing, like an African American, and navigating that path there. And so when you're saying this, it makes me think about the areas of experiencing loneliness for ourselves. And when you said, like, it's just my thing, like, I need to go out, I'm going to share it, and it's either going to be shared here or it's going to be shared in this other environment. I feel it might just be useful to spend some time talking about, I want to spend some time talking about, like, being in a space where you're able to explore some of those things that you need. And then I think if we have time here, I'd love to also just go back and explore the commitment, like I'm celebrating you as we're talking, because I'm hearing like your commitment to self. You're like, this is my process. Like, this is what I do. Take it or leave it. If you don't want me to do this, don't tell me. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel the integrity that you have there. So well, let me give it to you. I'm curious about like the group and like being in a place where you get multiple perspectives to be able to look at. But then I'm also very curious about like being in integrity with yourself, given some, like, what feels more alive in you right now to talk through.
Yeah, I think I would love to talk about the way that going to group every single session takes me to the edge. It doesn't have to. And there are plenty of sessions where the mood is jocular, and I'm not a person who's in mental health crisis as a rule. I continue to go because of the relationships and the scaffolding that it offers me for my life, and the dreams and the things I still want ahead of me. That being said, when I sit down in my chair and there's 6 other people there and Dr. Rosen, and we've all agreed, we've made a compact to come and play. Like, I like the word play because it keeps me from taking myself too seriously. even though mental health is deadly serious. But when I go there, there are times when I just sort of hold back. I'm like, I'm tired. You guys do it today. But anytime I want to find my edge, all I have to do is open my mouth, challenge someone, or say what's going on with me that I'm struggling with, because I can always come up with something. There's always a work problem or a parent. I mean, I'm a parent, so there's always something, right? And when I bring it up in the group, it always shakes me, right? Because I still want to be in control. More than anything in the world, I want to be in control. The minute I throw a piece of myself out into five group mates, they're going to shake that out of me. Oh, are you being codependent with your daughter? Oh, what does your husband say? What's your boundary around screens? Like, and all these thoughts and feelings are coming at me. Have you thought about this? What about that? Wait, didn't you make this mistake with your son 6 months ago? There's what pushes me to the edge in group is being seen by these other people and participating in a process where I'm going to be seen. There's a collective memory. They know my shtick. They know where I like to hide, and to be busted, and they will find out. Oh, this is you. This is your people pleasing, Christy. Oh, this is your insecurity, or you're pushing your husband. Oh, God forbid. Here's a good one. If I ever bring in anything about money, how my husband and I are doing finances, I will get busted 6 ways from Sunday. Oh, you're being deprivational, or you're just resisting your husband, um, in by engaging in a power struggle around money, and there's a better way. But the truth is, there's a part of me that wants it my way. I like my way. It's familiar. It's not the best way. It's made me miserable many, many times. What group offers is a new way, but newness is uncomfortable. And whether the issue is huge, like, oh my God, I'm so depressed, I want to die, what should I do? Or if it's small, like, well, my husband and I can't decide what allowance to give our children. That's a pretty manageable problem, but submitting it to group means confronting my habits, my codependency, all of those things. So that's what I love so much about it. It's a very dynamic, vibrant process. And it's not dependent on me going in and performing, oh, I have this great life. Like, there's no image management in group. It's like, you're either here to be laid bare, or what are you doing? Like, you wouldn't stay if you weren't willing to do that. And so, in terms of integrity to myself, that's a really fine line for me. Like, it's really tricky because on the one hand, I could claim integrity to myself as an excuse to hold on to some bad habits, right? This is the way I do it. This makes me feel safe. A lot of times when I'm claiming to be safe, I am saying to you and to myself, I'm scared to change and do better and be better, right? So sometimes, but that being said, there are a couple of fundamental truths. One of them is about secrets. One of them is about not going it alone. Like, that's, if I had to have a personal credo, it's, I don't do my life alone. I'm not interested in that. I don't need to do that. I'm not doing that. So with that foundation, and I don't hold secrets, then from there, everything else is kind of up for grabs, because my best ideas sometimes aren't so great, and I'm willing to be challenged. And that's a process that I just treasure. It's really important to me.
Absolutely. Like when you say this here, there's your willingness to be challenged just really comes through. And I want to make sure we highlight this here, because there's certain elements of this where this is a confrontational environment, but not like, and it is a challenging environment because you have to deal with you're confronted with yourself, you know. Yeah. And I think I as you're talking about this, it's helping me see, like, what are some of the elements that make certain group environments, certain conversations that have been certain masterminds that I've run, certain masterminds I've been a part of, so on and so forth. So that's my group environment that I've been in. What's been the difference between them being really powerful, really meaningful, life-changing and such, and not? And you're getting that one element that really rings true for me, which is the ability for them to help me confront myself.
Exactly.
It's interesting. It's like, as you're saying, I'm like, oh, there's different ways. Like sometimes I'm confronted when I see the person next to me like taking off and just being incredibly successful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. You came after me. You had all these things, and I'm still stuck in whatever story I'm telling to myself here.
Yes.
And so like even those days where it's like I'm taking a step back, it's actually like, oh, I can still be confronted in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
I'm also hearing from you. I don't do my life alone, and I don't hold secrets, and that feels really powerful as well. And the reason I say this here is, I don't. It's the element what I feel like I'm experiencing is like, like you're creating your environments, and you're like, hey, just so you know, I don't do life alone, and I don't hold secrets here.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a powerful move in terms of saying, like, when interacting with me, this is the world that you've just entered.
Yes.
And like, I don't know if we give ourselves that opportunity to create those worlds every time we walk into a room, every time we walk into having an experience with one another. So I want to acknowledge that. I wanted to give outliers, as you listen to this, think for yourself here about I call them agreements. Like, I'll go to people, I'm like, I'm going to hide nothing and hold nothing back, and I'm here to serve rather than please. And both of those things, when I come in, going forward in conversations, I'll make sure I say that there's basically three things. I'll say this: when I know a conversation turns crucial, those three things show up. I say, I'm going to hide nothing and hold nothing back. I'm here to serve you, not to please you. And the last one is, I have a track record of having life-changing conversations. It's just what I do. And at this point in my life, I refuse to have anything less than that. So just are you open to the possibility of this being a life-changing conversation? People can say yes or no to all of them. And my general thing is that it changes the dynamic of the conversation. What could have been a hour-long conversation might become a 15-minute conversation if we're not able to get to the places where people will be real enough that a life-changing experience can take place. But I also realized as time went on that those were actually, it was more a reminder for me to say, hey, Niiamah, you're a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Like, naturally. Like, that's what I don't want to be alone. My number one fear is being alone in the world. And it's like, okay, here goes how I am committed to be with you today. And I am committed to hold nothing back. I am committed to serve rather than step into my pleasing mode. And I am committed to do everything it takes to make sure that this conversation, we explore the possibilities that are life changing, as opposed to pleasant and perfunctory and whatever else it is. And so when I hear you say, I don't do my life alone, I don't hold secrets, I'm like, that is actually really attracting to me, because I'm like, this person knows their world. Oh, we got to play in a world where she's making a commitment to me that or she's in a commitment to herself. We've now entered a world where secrets can be on the table.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I am so on fire right now. Tomorrow, when I go to group and when things get heated and I say something that someone doesn't like, which happens every time, I'm going to say, I am not here to please you. I am here to serve you. I can't wait. I'm so excited. You just gave me language for something that's really, really critical that I've never had language for. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the dynamic of being with other people and being able to exchange and learn and grow and such from that here. Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for picking on that. And that's what I feel that's happening in that group space. Is a space of people they're not going with, oh, I'm not sure what to give, allowance to give to my child. And they're like, well, as a parent, you should be kind to yourself. We're like, no, we're not here to please you. There's service going all around, and it's not always easy to take in. Yes. But if you're willing to go through it, well, let you finish that. It's not always easy to take in, but if you're willing to go through it, what comes on the upside, on the other side?
On the other side of that is true intimacy, true attachment, and true connection. All those years of just straight people pleasing on my part meant that I was a shell of a person who couldn't bring my preferences, my desires. I couldn't bring any of my core self to the table because I was so busy figuring out what you wanted and how to give it to you. There's no way to have a relationship with that, Christie. That's nothing. That's air. That's chimera. So going through that process means, oh my God, we're going to get juicy. We're going to get deep. It's going to be real. And I have to remind myself that the mess of realness is absolutely the heart of relationships. it's not a problem. It is the thing. It is the relationship. I spent so many years sidestepping what I would call mess because I was so uncomfortable. Now I have enough tools that I can be messy. I can be angry. You can be angry at me. I can feel hurt or fear or rage. And it's the fabric of our relationship. It's not the only thing. And if I put both feet on the ground, face you, own the feelings, we move through them, and then we're closer, which I think is what I was scared of all along, being close to people.
It's a wonderful place for us to wrap up here. It's like you say that it was a place where you're scared of, and at the same time, it feels like that's exactly what you were desiring at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yes, absolutely.
It's an interesting thing, the thing that we do, like how we are with ourselves, how we are with ourselves. Christie, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. As I said to you, I think you're a tremendous person. I'm really glad that you took the time to put your life and your story out there. I'm glad you got the feedback you got around the book, so that
Yes,
you
me
can make
too.
something, you said this before. You're like, I'm a nobody. I'm like, that's not necessarily true here. Like, but you are everybody. That's what's the thing.
Yeah.
You're just a person, right? But you've lived your life, and and you were willing enough to share it. And I appreciate being here with you in this space here. As we wrap up for today, if there's one thing that you would want to make sure that outliers know, and if there's a way that they can continue to go on the journey with you, besides buying the book Group, which I thoroughly recommend, what would that be? How can we continue this journey with you?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, my impulse is like, stay in touch. Tell me how you're doing. Like, find me on Instagram, tag me and tell me what you did beyond your edge today. I love those conversations. I know that social media is highly problematic, and it's an incredible tool of connection. It really is. And I think that we can stay in touch. And I'm on Instagram as Christie Tate, and you can also find me on Facebook. I'm too scared for Twitter, so no, I'm not there. I'm not there.
If you're in Group, then all of a sudden there'll be some confrontation there. There'll be some
Yeah,
people to
that
for.
I don't know how, I don't have boundaries strong enough for what happens on Twitter, but
Yeah.
also like I feel like people outliers who are continually day to day committing to being outside, like on their edge and pushing forward, like we're all going to meet each other in the mix of life. Like we're going to cross paths, like just like you and I did. And there's an incredible way that connection happens, and it happens just by all of us doing our thing and looking up and seeing each other. I think that's amazing.
So well put. So well put. Christie, I'm greatly appreciative of our conversation here. I'm looking forward to our ongoing connections and relationship. I'm going to keep looking up and seeing you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for putting yourself out there. And thank you for really just you're someone that I feel like you know what you stand for. And that really shines through. And I really appreciate you and the conversation that we've had.
Me too. This has been incredible. Thank you for all that you do and how you've shown me and given me language for things I've never had before. So I got a lot out of this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ready to play at your edge? Come join us inside of the Outliers Edge multiverse, where you have the opportunity to come for 14 days and play in the sandbox of your unique leadership style and take everything about you to its next edge. Go to outliersedge.com/OE guest pass in order to receive your 2-week gift.